Nothing stated by Steve Bartlett during the Fight Back with Steve show is intended to be legal advice, and appearing on the show does not create an attorney-client relationship with Steve Bartlett. Before taking legal action, it is advisable to consult with an attorney of your choice. The views and opinions expressed by the callers and guests of the Fight Back with Steve show are solely opinionated by those individuals and are not necessarily the expressions and viewpoints of Steve Bartlett or Talkwat Studios.
Top of the morning to you, and happy St. Patrick's Day from us at the Fight Back with Steve Bartlett show. Hopefully you're all drinking a lot of green beer today, drinking corned beef and cabbage, and having a heck of a good time. So my name is Steve, and this is the pot at the end of the rainbow. Welcome to Fight Back with Steve. Well, sorry, we didn't have a show last week. I forgot the reason why, but I do remember the reason why. I was stuck in depositions because besides being your benevolent host, I actually have a day job. I'm an attorney. And what I do for a living is I'm a professional arguer. People pay me to argue for them. And there's a difference between the arguments that I do for a living and the type of arguments I do when I'm on, let's say, Facebook or on the show. When I argue for a living, I'm trying to convince a judge to agree with what my position is, and there's another attorney trying to argue their position as well. But generally, the judge has no stake in the game and has no opinion until we make our actual argument. Or if I'm going in front of a jury, the jury doesn't have an opinion about my client until we're actually in trial. I'm not trying to talk a bunch of people who already believe in my client's guilt into finding him innocent, for instance. Apparently, the jury is supposed to believe that he's innocent until proven guilty. Here's the evidence, and then I try to convince them why what they heard, they should come back with a verdict that I want versus a verdict that the state attorney wants. But I'm not trying to take a hard-held opinion and try to convince them to do something differently. But that's what I do for a living. I get paid to be a professional arguer. But one thing I'd like to do is I like to argue in my spare time as well. But when I argue in my spare time, I'm arguing in a different way and for a different reason. When I argue in my spare time, it's not because I'm trying to win. I'm not going to get points. There's no judges who are watching me argue saying, boy, you made more good points than the other side made good points. You're the winner. It doesn't go like that. When I argue with somebody, I'm not trying to get a third person to agree with me as opposed to somebody else. What I try to do when I'm arguing, when I'm on Facebook, is to try to persuade or convince somebody to change their mind about a position that they have. So when I'm arguing with, let's say, a Republican about Obama, I'm trying to persuade that person to follow my line of thinking as opposed to doing what they wish to do on their own. And that's what I always try to do. And a lot of people I know, they're on Facebook and they just take it personally. They just shout down the other side. You're an idiot, you're stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, and then it turns into a shouting match. And that doesn't solve anything. The purpose of discussing in the First Amendment is to exchange ideas with the idea of persuading somebody to be on your side. And the holy grail of arguing for me is to take someone who has a position that is totally different from me, and then by trying to find out why they feel that way, to try to establish some sort of common ground, and then show how my logical conclusion based upon that particular paradigm that we're in, that my conclusion successfully promotes their own values than their originally held belief. In other words, here's an example of that, theoretically at least. Let's say somebody's pro-life, but they're also against contraceptions. Well, you can argue, well, the reason you're pro-life is because stopping abortions is the most important thing to you. So if you promote birth control, what will happen is there will be less teenage pregnancies and therefore less abortions. So if you show the person that argument, then maybe you can persuade them to follow your argument about why we should, make it easier for teenagers to get birth control because it will actually lower abortions. Or I have a friend who, today I was talking about the death penalty, and he's trying to get the death penalty eliminated in the state of Florida, get it abolished by a constitutional amendment. Well, the problem is a lot of people are very for the death penalty, especially conservatives, and I encouraged him to look at their financial, make it a pocketbook or a wallet issue by saying that the more money you spend on the death penalty, you could be, spending a lot less money if you got rid of the death penalty, because it's cheaper to keep somebody in prison for the rest of their life than to keep somebody on death row for 20 years. So if you really are a deficit hawk and you're against spending money, getting rid of capital punishment would actually be something good and will save the taxpayers a lot of money. So if you go under that idea of arguing that it's better to get a conservative by using their own conservative values, then hopefully you can actually persuade them. At least that's what the goal is. That's what my opinion is of why I argue and everything like that. And because I love to argue, but here's the truth. The truth is, it doesn't work. I doubt ever in my life I've ever been able to convince somebody to change their opinion and say, I'm wrong, I agree with you, Bartlett. It never works, ever. I'm going my whole life as an arguer, ever since I was a little kid, which is when I started arguing. I don't think I've ever convinced anybody to change their belief or change their position. I just argue until I'm blue in the face, and people just have their heels dug in and they won't change their mind. And today's show wasn't supposed to be about this. What today's show was supposed to be about was, I was going to do a show about abortion or a show about evolution or whatever, but I changed my mind, and here's why. Yesterday I was watching on television, they have the new version of Cosmos, and yesterday's episode was about evolution, and they really did a nice job explaining how evolution works and how nature through random selection works and all of that. And at the end of the one segment, they went to commercial, and the commercial was for the movie Noah coming out. And I found that really funny, that here's a show about evolution and they have a commercial for the movie Noah coming out, which is the exact opposite of what evolution is supposed to stand for. So I thought that was ironic, and I put a little post on Facebook, and somebody, a friend of mine, a really nice person, posted back that evolution is the fairy tale for grown-ups. And then it ended up turning into a posting about how evolution isn't real, about how intelligent design is accepted by the scientific community. And then when I tried to tell them that they were full of it, then people started coming down on me for being anti-religious and being a bully. And then eventually one of my liberal friends got on and started shouting at the other side how they are the cause for everything that's wrong in our country, and our democracy is going down. And it just turned into this complete free-for-all. When I just wanted to make a snippy little comment about the irony of having a commercial about the flood and Noah right after a show about evolution. But I just thought that was kind of funny. But I was going to originally start doing research to find out why intelligent design is wrong and all of that, and come on the show and present evidence about why evolution is true and why intelligent design is just religion in under a new heading. They're cleaning it up, as opposed to calling it creationalism. Now they're calling it intelligent design, but religion is religion, and the courts have agreed with that. The scientific community has agreed with that. But rather than going into that, I started thinking about what's the point of putting that show on? I mean, the people who are going to call in, they're going to agree with me if they agree with that position, or they're going to not agree with me, and I'm not going to be able to change their mind. Regardless of what kind of data I give them, I'm not going to be able to change their mind, because you can't change somebody's mind once they have their mind made up, especially if they're conservatives. Conservatives tend to believe in dogma. Once they have a belief, and that belief becomes their belief, nothing you do, nothing you say can change that belief. Now, I don't know if other people out there have the same hobby and they like to argue with people the way I do, But if you feel the way I do, or you like to make a comment about it, call in the show. The phone number is 813-235-0644. It's supposed to flash up every once in a while, but rather than me sitting here talking to myself, I would rather talk to another live individual. Okay? But that's the numbers. The numbers are open up. So if you want to talk to me about this issue or any other issue that is of concern to you or any questions, call 813-235-0644. Now, there is, like I said, you can argue until you're blue in the face with somebody, and it's not going to make any difference. There's a study that was done about 2 years ago out of the University of Michigan, a clinical study done by psychologists. And what these psychologists wanted to do is, how do people who have beliefs based not upon facts but on false beliefs, how do they respond when they are actually given facts which challenge those beliefs that are based on nonsense? And what they would do is they would give somebody an article with the fake belief and have the person read it. So here's an example. They would have an article about how the United States found weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and they would ask people to comment on it. And the people who already had that belief, even though it's completely wrong, even though factually there were no weapons of mass destruction found in Iraq, they would rate how strongly they held that belief. And then they would give a second article to that person, and that article would actually have the real story. The first story was completely made up and fabricated, but the second story they would show these people, and the second story, oh, we're getting a phone call, I believe, but let me finish the story. The second story would totally tell you the truth about what actually happened and say there were no weapons of mass destruction. Well, what would happen is when the people read that story and then were asked what their belief was, the people who believed there was weapons of mass destruction, after learning the truth, they believed it even more. Even when presented the truth, they doubled down on their convictions. So when confronted with evidence and the truth of how wrong they are, they believe even more in their fairy tales. But we have a caller now. Yes, who is this?
Yes, this is the Walrus from Palm Harbor.
Hi, the Walrus. I missed you. How you been?
Wonderful. Again, Mr. Bartlett, intelligent design. If you don't believe intelligent design, I think that you are in error. The world was, according to the scripture and according to the Bible, the world was made in 7 days. And I don't understand how you could not agree with that.
Well, intelligent design is different from creationalism. There's three beliefs. There's evolution. Then the second belief is creationalism, which means whatever it says in the book of Genesis is the truth. The third belief is intelligent design, which says that evolution did occur, but evolution wasn't based upon randomness. The randomness was caused by an intelligent designer who was like working as an invisible hand guiding us to be who we are.
Jesus.
So
a variation of Genesis, but still intelligent design. I don't understand how you don't believe that, how that was not possible. It irks me that you critique these religious Republicans like myself, who have strong ties to the church and have strong ties to religion and strong ties to our government up in Washington. You do not take our viewpoint, and as far as religion goes, I think that someone like you is just testing our faith, and I just don't agree with it.
Well, do you feel stronger with your faith after being tested, or weaker with it?
Much stronger, because people with opinions like yours who are incorrect are destined to fade away.
So you should be happy that I'm challenging your beliefs, because it makes you even stronger in your belief.
I don't think you can. You're capable of challenging my belief, because I believe what I believe. I believe intelligent design based off of Genesis, and I think that you're wrong. I think that you're making error, foible after foible, mistake after mistake, and you just don't understand the power and the control that our religious right-wing Christians such as myself have on this economy and this.
Well, according to the person who created the concept of intelligent design, they tried to teach it in the public school systems, and they challenged it and went to court, and the doctor who actually came up with the idea of intelligent design testified as an expert witness in the case. And after a lot of testimony, he actually had to agree that his theory is not based upon any scientific evidence, that there is no scientific evidence that demonstrates that the theory of evolution is incorrect, or that the concept of intelligent design is anything else other than a faith-based concept.
Exactly, faith. And one thing I believe, I have my faith.
And it's okay. It's okay for you to have your faith.
Right-wing left-wing libertarians don't have faith.
You can.
They don't have faith. They don't believe.
It's okay.
They don't believe. And again, people like you are testing our faith.
It's okay. It's okay to have your faith, as the court said in that case. Maybe the Christians are right. Maybe there is intelligent design. However, there's no evidence of intelligent design. There's no evidence that God is actually causing evolution to occur, and therefore it's a question of faith and should not be taught in schools. Just like let's say you go to Vegas and you're playing craps, and you cross your fingers every time you roll the dice, and you say, "Come on, 7," and it rolls a 7. Well, based upon randomness, it rolled a 7. Who is anyone to judge whether it was because of your prayer to God which got you the 7 or not?
You're trying to take education and compare it to gambling. Unbelievable. Talk about testing faith. The more private schools there are, and the more charter schools there are, the more that we who believe and have faith will prosper.
Well, as an American, you have a right to send your child to school anywhere you want. And if you want to write the check and have your child indoctrinated with your own personal beliefs, that's your right. However, the public school system, our country should ensure that our kids get the best education.
There you go, spouting off your liberal, libertarian viewpoints, testing my faith again.
Okay. Well, I don't want to test your faith. I believe your faith is the foundation of your belief system. I'm just assuming, even though we've never met, but based upon your other calls, you also have you believe in trickle-down economics, Reaganomics, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It works.
And do you know of any studies or any economists who've ever written any papers saying that it works?
I don't. As I said before, there's lies. There's damn lies, and there's statistics.
Okay.
And statistics show that the trickle down may not work, but our leader, Ronald Reagan, was brave and strong with an inexperienced economic advisor who talks negatively about trickle down, but trickle down works. It worked for me.
Do you believe in global warming?
Or
climate change?
No, it's freezing out. Are you serious? It's still snowing up in New Jersey and New York and Ohio. I have families that are still
instead of global warming, I should have said the term climate change.
March 17th.
Do you believe that there's climate change?
Hoax.
Okay. So even though the majority of scientists believe that climate change is real, and even though scientists agree that evolution is real, and even though economists agree that supply-side economics doesn't work, but Keynesian economics does work, you still continue, in spite of the facts and the evidence, to cling to your beliefs. Why is that?
Mr. Bartlett, it's called faith. I have faith, sir.
Okay. Faith in what?
I'm not an infidel.
Okay, but
I'm a Christian.
Okay, how does your Christianity affect your belief in climate change? Why are Christians against the concept of climate change? Aren't as Christians you supposed to protect the planet?
We're not against it. It's a fallacy. It's a falsehood. It's a ruse.
Based upon what? What's the evidence that you've looked at that made you come up with that conclusion? Other than the fact that you've listened to
some other fabricated scientific theory with no basis.
Okay. So there's no basis. So all the evidence that the scientists say about global warming, you say it's not true. You say it's not true. All the evidence that the scientists show that there is climate change, that there's extreme weather events around the world. I
guess I need to repeat myself. It's snowing in New Jersey.
Okay.
20 below in Columbus, Ohio, a month ago.
Well,
global
climate change says that the temperature of the planet is going up, which means there's going to be climate changes. Some areas are going to have more extreme cold, others are going to have more extreme heat, but generally the entire climate is going to change. The whole temperature of the planet.
My relatives in Hoboken. Mr. Bartlett, I'm a little upset here. I'm going to get off the line. I just get tired of these liberal rants of yours, and I just wish you would come
Walrus,
up with more
before
facts.
you go, Mr. Walrus,
have a nice day.
Before you go, don't hang up. Are you still there? You go. Okay. Well, what the Walrus did was he just gave us a good example of how the people on the right have dogmatic beliefs not based upon any facts. They have faith, which they justify as to having certain beliefs, and then once they have that belief, regardless of what kind of evidence you provide them, they're not going to disagree with it. So I don't know how you can ever persuade somebody that those beliefs are wrong. Like I said, that study in Michigan showed that when you actually give proof that their facts are wrong. So if I actually had with me Charles Darwin as an expert and actually went step by step showing how evolution actually works and why what it says in the Book of Creation is incorrect, the Walrus's belief, based upon this study by the University of Michigan, his belief in creationism would even be stronger. So the point I want to ask you listeners out there is, why is it like this? Why do people have these beliefs that are so dogmatically driven and aren't willing to change them? Are they just stupid? There was another study that was done by Brock University in 2012 in Ontario. So this is a Canadian study, so I guess it's a boat, things differently than what they would study in the United States. But what they did is, this was actually published in the Psychological Science magazine, that children who have low IQs are more likely to grow up being socially conservative and also more likely to grow up being racist. So I'm not saying that everybody who's a conservative has a low IQ. What I'm saying is, if you have a low IQ, you're more likely to grow up being conservative. And the conclusion that the study showed for why it is like that is that conservative beliefs are very simple, that structure is provided, and within that structural framework, everybody knows what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to act, and the answers are very, very clear. As the Bible says, it's a sin to eat from the fruit of knowledge, the tree of knowledge. And that's the key. Do what you're told, believe in what we tell you to believe, don't ask you questions, and the answers are easy. It's a lot easier for a person to believe in creationism than it is to learn about evolution. Reality isn't always clear. What the truth is isn't exactly easily comprehended. Scientists have shown that at the subatomic level, things aren't how they appear in the non-subatomic level, that reality is a lot different than what common sense dictates. It's called quantum physics or quantum mechanics. And the same is true with a lot of things. It's very easy for a conservative to say, we hate government spending, we want to get back to traditional values, we want to get rid of government waste, we need our country to be strong. But these platitudes are just simple slogans when the world is a lot more complex than what these simple ideas suggest. And so therefore conservatives are more likely to cling to these simple ideas regardless of what the evidence says. When Ronald Reagan talked about the welfare queen, there was never a welfare queen, but still you see on Facebook to this day people posting how we have to change the welfare state, how Obama is the king of providing welfare to people, as if they don't know that the entire concept of welfare changed while Clinton was president, and that you have to work if you're going to get welfare, and there's a time limit for how long you could be on welfare for. Conservatives fail to see the SNAP program, which is food stamps, is a program that actually helps stimulate the economy. Economists say that the best government spending for fixing the economy, for coming up with economic growth and creating jobs, is the food stamps program, because it's putting money in the hands of people who need it, who then spend it, and spending money is what grows the economy. They don't see it that way because they don't like to read. They believe in their platitudes that all government spending on the poor is bad. Conservatives don't care about facts. They insist that President Obama was born in Kenya. They disagree with the birth certificate, even after he had to present his papers by showing the long form of his birth certificate. The conservatives still, even more than before, believe that he is a Kenyan and that it's a fake. They believe that he's Muslim, even though there's no evidence of him being Muslim at all, because this is their core belief. They believe what they're told, and it's getting even more difficult for people once they believe these things to break out of this belief system, because people don't all read the same news anymore. People don't read the New York Times or the St. Petersburg Times. People read what they see on their internet. People read what their friends post on Facebook. People watch their own news channel. If you're a conservative, you watch Fox News. If they don't, they listen to the same radio. So all they're hearing, they're living in this bubble. All they're hearing is the same old right-wing propaganda that's repeated to them over and over and over again. Now, normally on the show, I have a Bartlett Fights Back BS segment, but there's no need to do it because everything that I read is not true. It's a constant bombardment of false lies, like Sarah Palin talking about how Ukraine, Crimea, was invaded because of Obama. Obama didn't do anything to cause Ukraine to be invaded. What could the man have done differently? Nothing. It's a total crock. But let me get to the bottom part. Why do I bother arguing with people like the Walrus? Here's why. I'm not going to change his mind. Nothing I'm going to ever do changes his mind. But let me tell you a story. This is a fable, so it's not a real story. There's no real guy in this story, but it's a fable. There was this wise philosopher, and every day he would go out to the city square, and he would go with his group of disciples, and he would preach about all the injustice and all the madness and all the craziness going on in the world. And the people would walk by, and although his disciples were digging it, the people who walked by, they just laughed and kept walking, and none of them ever listened to anything he had to say. This went on for days, weeks, months, years. Years went by, and he would be up there, and he would be giving speech about all the problems in the world and all the injustice and his solutions to fix it. But the world wouldn't listen. He couldn't convince anybody to follow his beliefs, except for his core disciples, but no one else. So finally, one day, one of his students said, "Teacher, why do you bother talking anymore? Why do you bother screaming out about the injustice when the world has gone mad? The world is insane. Nobody is paying attention to you anymore. Why bother arguing or shouting out about the insanity when they're not listening because the world is insane?" And he looked at his student and he said, "The reason why I must continue to argue and continue to preach against this insanity, although no one is listening, is so that I too don't become insane." So that's why I feel a need to fight back. Because I don't want to be like those people who choose the first option, which is to ignore the problem. I don't like to be the second type of person who gets on the bandwagon and goes with the flow with what everybody else says. I believe that when you see injustice or you see something's wrong, that you have a duty to get up to your feet, to raise your fist in the air, and to fight back. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.